Yo, good
Yo,
morning.
yo, we're live again.
We are.
Um,
I don't mind being live. I mean,
no,
there's some stuff to be edited here, right? But I like the interactivity we get when we actually get comments and stuff. So
yeah, it's nice to have some comments and
yeah,
some people watching us, but we I think we showed a short window.
yeah, we should record one for next week, this week, because if we don't, we'll be on a plane. I believe both of us.
Yeah, we will on Tuesday, so we better do that.
Yeah,
Um,
we'll have to record this week. So what's up? How you
well,
doing?
I'm doing good, man. The business technicalities. I'm Brett. You're Jason, and here we are.
You're over there.
I'm
There, you
over
did it. Nope, you're over there. See, you
there.
did it.
You did it. I'm used to being on the other side. So, hey, good morning, JG. Look at that.
Here. Well, no, we'll just do this. Bloop. There.
Oh my gosh, that just scared me. Now
I
my
fixed it. I
my
fixed
eyes
it.
wandered.
Yeah.
Oh
Okay.
my
Morning.
gosh.
This is business technicalities.
You were here, Jason and I were talking. It was funny because I was on a meeting yesterday with the team, and I had my camera on, and I was thinking no one else did. And sometimes Jason will turn his camera on, or sometimes he won't. And
Yeah. I almost always
we just
do.
talking. I guess meeting. It got us to thinking about meeting etiquette.
Yeah.
Depending on what the reasoning for the meeting is, right? So, what do you think? So, you're having a meeting with your team. I know
Yep.
that, like with Matt and his team, they're always on a Zoom call all day long, and
Not all of them, but yes.
and most of them have their camera on the whole time,
Yep.
and they're just sitting there working, and they have the Zoom call going, and but sometimes like when we do leadership meetings, we all have our camera on.
Yep.
And we're sitting there talking, and actually, I think it's a better conversation when you have a camera on. But sometimes I've done sales calls where I wait to see if they have their camera on before I turn mine on. What do you think about that? Because I have thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, any meeting I schedule, cameras come on by default, right? Like, and
Okay.
and that's a big thing there, right? Is that if I join a meeting and all the cameras are off, then that means then I'm unlikely to turn my camera on because clearly the meeting was either, especially if mine is off by default, right? So if the
Yeah.
meeting host sets the meeting to be cameras off by default, then I won't always turn it on. If I enter the meeting with my camera on, it's staying on the whole time, unless I'm eating. You guys have seen that in the sales meeting a couple times. It's like
Yep.
the one exception to the rule. On Mondays, I tend to go to the gym. I tend to not get there till about 12:30. By the time I work out, shower, and then grab lunch, I'm back at my desk at like 1:40, 1:50. Uh, and then by the time I get back, I'm shoving food into my face. So I'll turn the camera off then because no one wants to see me eat. I'll also mute it when I'm chewing because no one wants to hear me chew. But generally, I favor the highest bandwidth communication that we have chosen for that, right? Like if I'm
Hmm.
having a meeting with video capabilities, to me, somebody's made the decision that we require a meeting with video and
Video
screen share
capability. Yep.
capabilities, right? And that's not always the case, but generally that's the case. So I will tend to have that, right? Like you lose so much by not having video on.
Hmm.
I see you rolling your eyes if the video's off. I can't see you visibly sag when I say something, right? Like you can't read any of those body language cues, and those
Right.
body language cues are actually pretty big.
Yeah, especially when you have your team or you have someone online you're trying to sell to, because I do a lot of 15-minute discovery calls and video calls, and so does the team, and I think you build more of a connection when you're actually kind of looking eye to eye in essence. Um, so it's weird how meetings have evolved more so after COVID, right? Because a lot of you had Teams back, and you had Zoom and you had all that going on, but most of the time people were either meeting in person or you
Yeah.
know COVID taught companies and taught people that you could actually have meaningful conversations over video calls.
I mean, I've been doing right. So we've got a couple clients, and you guys did too. We've got clients to deal with remotely. So we've always been the case where we've had to learn how to deal with people in meetings like that. But yeah, I think the world in whole has learned how to do that with meetings.
Right.
COVID, right, for sure. Uh,
Well, go
yeah,
ahead. I see there's a question out there on something totally unrelated, but I
totally
don't know.
unrelated. Yep. So
Which one do
JG,
you
can
answer?
you ping me on a Discord or somewhere that we share in common? I'm glad to talk to you about that, but it's totally off topic for this meeting, so I don't think we should do it in this call.
That's all right. That's all right. We'll get the cloud backup's an important thing.
Yeah.
So when you think about etiquette and you think about you got to 5, 6, 10 people on a Zoom call. Um, do you think when you're not talking you should mute?
I think if you can't keep your mouth shut when you're not talking, you should mute, right? Like, or if you're in a noisy area, you should mute. I tend to not mute, honestly. If I'm on a really big call, I'll mute, or I'll
Right.
follow. If everyone's muted except a couple people talking, then I'll mute. But typically, I'm eating like so here. I'm in my office at home. The kids are at school. My wife's out in the other room, right? She's not going to be noisy. It at the office, I'm in my office. Typically, I have the door shut. Like
Right.
I'll mute if a siren comes, but typically I'm not. I don't talk to myself, so I don't necessarily need to mute.
I've been on Zoom calls where somebody thought they were muted and they started yelling at their kids.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I've been on those. I've been on Zoom meetings where people thought they were muted and started complaining about the speaker. That one's always fun.
Really? See,
Oh yeah,
I've heard those stories. I've never been on one of those calls.
yeah.
I have heard that.
And
So,
I mean, I've been on like basically everything I've ever done with Ray Orsini, where he's thinks he's not muted, but he's actually muted. He's
oh,
like
there you go.
it's an inside joke at this point that at some point or another in every call you have with Ray, he's going to be muted and start speaking.
Well, it's I try not to do that. I try to make sure that if I want to say something or raise my hand, I unmute myself first just so I don't make the stupid mistake of you know
Yeah.
just starting to talk and no one can hear what I'm trying to say. Um, you think about the video stuff has come a long way. Excuse me, and we tend to lean towards it now more so than even phone calls. I mean, heck, 10 years ago you were on the phone with people. You and I were talking about phone calls today, right?
Yep.
And making calls. And we have gone so far to this side of video calls. Do you, it's interesting. I think this way is we've almost become too laxed in video calls.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you're like the king of huddle,
I
right? In Slack.
am,
So in all honesty, in many of those cases, especially like when we're gonna need screen sharing or something, I'd rather just move to something like Zoom.
yeah,
If you're gonna huddle me, generally, you probably just call me. You're more likely to get me. I'm more likely to
yep,
answer a phone call than I am to answer a huddle when I'm running around.
yeah,
Uh, so I don't know. I think some of that's driven by we use tools now, right? Like we don't use conference phones in conference rooms anymore. Like as a
right.
matter of fact, I don't even think we set our conference phone back up in our conference room. I don't even think it's in there.
We moved it because we were having another meeting and then it never got put back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we've been in the building since February, and that means since February we've not had a phone call where we needed to use a conference phone, which is crazy to me. I mean that is a thing I never saw happening. That yeah, I mean I it's the communication in the world evolves, right? We move on, we do
Mhm.
different things. We should probably talk about other meeting etiquette things. I will
Yeah.
give a giant pet peeve of mine. I'm late to meetings a non-zero amount of times, but I do get very frustrated when I am on time for a meeting, especially when I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off to join a meeting on
Yeah.
time. and I get there and no one else is there.
Yeah, I think so. So let me ask you. So my thing, I always learned if you're on time, you're late. If you're if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. Um, when you have a meeting like that, and some people are coming from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and so either in person or on Zoom, that is a pet peeve. I hate it when I set up a call with somebody and a minute or two after the meeting was supposed to start, they jump on. I've had people, I'll wait 7 minutes. If I
Yeah.
have a Zoom call set up, I'll wait 7 minutes, and then if they haven't popped in, I'm out.
Yeah,
Um,
usually it's either 5 or 10 depending on the meeting for me, and yeah, 100% will leave. A lot of companies an increasing number of the bigger organizations we deal with, and I know CompT is like this too. They run their meetings typically they're 50 an hour long meetings actually 50 minutes, right? So
mhm,
it starts at the top of the hour, but then it ends at like say 11:50, right, instead of
right.
noon. I actually really like that practice. It's a pain in the butt from a scheduling standpoint. That just because our tools aren't natively set up to support that yet, so you manually have to end, right. Like you usually get offered 15-minute increments when you make the meeting, so it's a little more effort on your part. But it does, especially in person, it gives
Mhm.
people a little bit of buffer. And then, if the meeting runs 5 minutes over, you can still vacate the room. And I think this is more relevant for places where conference rooms are still in use. Like the one big
Yeah,
customer we would go down all the time. We'd go down quarterly and we'd have a meeting in a conference room and we'd get there and inevitably
there's
somebody is
another
still
meeting.
occupying the conference room we're supposed to be in when our meeting is supposed to start. And that
Yeah.
it's it now you get this compounding effect, and we saw it last week at so my son had a soccer tournament last weekend, right? And the games that this is U9 soccer, right? And so they're kids, and they're supposed to be two 25-minute halves with about a 5-minute halftime between it, right? But they were starting these games every hour. So the first one started at 8. It ended on time. It ended at like 8:55.
Mhm.
Right. Our game started at 9 the one day. Well, by the time you get to like 1 or 2 o'clock,
They're
because of
20, 30 minutes
everyone,
behind.
yeah, we were 15 minutes behind, right? Because
Mm.
it's a compounding effect. So you need that full hour for your meeting. The people before you don't get out till like 9:02 or 10:02. Well, now you run till 11:02 because you need an
Mhm.
hour to get through your meeting. Now the next group can't start till 11:05, right? Like and
Yeah,
so you end up losing like 15 minutes if there's no gap in there. And I think that generally people should try to end meetings 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes early, just to give people
mhm.
time to clear out of the rooms and to get ready for their next thing.
I agree. So let me ask you this. What are your thoughts on you schedule a 30-minute meeting and or you've been asked to be in a 30-minute meeting and it goes 40?
I'll usually stay, or if I have another conflict, I'll drop.
Yeah.
The opposite's also true, right? Like I get a lot of hour long meetings, a ton of them.
Mhm.
A lot of them don't need an hour, but I'll
Right.
tell you what, if you schedule an hour, there's a high likelihood it'll end up taking up most of an hour. Right. Like, but it could be a topic that we could have condensed down into 15 minutes or a half hour, right? Like, but it ends up taking the full hour because we know we have it. I see
Right.
Travis here saying if he's late, he gets embarrassed. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm late in non-zero amount. I can't. I'm just too. I got too much going on, so I'm not usually embarrassed. And I'm not late for client facing meetings, or very rarely late for client facing meetings. But internal stuff, I'll show up a couple minutes late pretty frequently, and that's just how it is because of
Yeah.
the way our meetings are scheduled.
Yeah, I like the adage of, you have scheduled an hour meeting, but at 10 minutes to the end of that hour, you're wrapping it up and getting people out of the room or out. Zoom makes it easier because no one has to leave a room.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
one of my pet peeve, that's why I asked that question. You schedule a 30-minute meeting and you go 40 minutes and you have back-to-back meetings.
Yep.
That'll be my
You
pet
just
peeve.
leave. I mean,
Yeah.
you just leave. I mean, I
I
have another
I'm
meeting. I
actually
gotta go.
embarrassed sometimes to leave. I, I I've been on, if I'm on a meeting with let's say you, I'm gonna think twice before I say, I gotta get that. I mean, because
No,
you're my boss. I mean,
nope.
that's
You just say, hey, I have another meeting I need to get to. I gotta go, and you go.
Now the other adage is I schedule 15-minute discovery calls. Um,
Yeah.
I working with Lori, our new sales executive, we actually changed those to 30-minute because they go longer, especially when you're on a call and the conversation's going well and you're getting to a point you're asking a lot of questions to get the get the information to quote a proper assessment, quote proper managed services. So we've changed those to 30 minutes for Lori, but still me, I keep the 15-minute ones and I try to be done in that 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to ever hold somebody past the time they thought they were going to have, because I've done it and I've seen people kind of irritated about it. What are some other meeting
I,
etiquette things?
uh, if
What's a
so, I'm guilty. This is somewhat a do as I say, not as I do one, because I'm guilty of it sometimes. If you called the meeting, I expect you to have a rough idea what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Right. If this is
yeah.
your meeting, then you're in charge of the agenda. You're in charge of making sure, we have whatever actions and takeaways we have, right?
Hmm.
You're in charge of, all of the things that come with having a meeting because we've had, uh, I've definitely had cases where I feel like it's Groundhog Day. Like I've had the same meeting
Hmm.
6 times because we go into a meeting, we talk about something, no one takes notes, there's no agenda, there's no action items. We come to conclusion, the person this is something technical because the way we do dispatching and scheduling, the person that we talked about, they come out of the meeting, they can't work on the suggestions and stuff right away, and they forget them by the time they actually get scheduled to work on it again, and then they request another meeting, and it happens over and over and over again.
Yeah, I'm a
uh,
note taker.
Yeah, I mean, increasingly, if I call a meeting, I just invite fireflies to it, which
Hmm.
is, I mean, we could talk about that as etiquette for a bit, but I use fireflies.ai. It's a meeting recorder. It does live transcription. It captures, uses AI to capture suggested action items and things like that. It
Hmm.
generates meeting minutes, right? It's pretty useful, uh, and so I'll tend to, for my meetings, a lot of times I'll just invite that and I'll get the
Hmm.
transcript. At least then you can go back and read the transcripts, right?
Yep.
If you need that, or we have some measure that it happened. But let's talk
Hmm.
about that, right? Like, is it okay for me to invite my AI transcriber to a meeting I didn't schedule?
Um, I etiquette wise, no, I think you should ask the meeting
Yeah,
organizer.
I always
But
ask.
when we added fireflies to my thing, we put it as automatic. So when I would join your meetings, it would just turn on.
Yeah,
So there was that. But I is there a way to do it that it's not necessarily because yeah, I think you got to ask permission because it's taking notes on
you,
everybody, and I love how it takes notes because that based on my name in the meeting, it's saying who's doing
yep.
the talking at that specific time.
Yeah, in
Um,
many cases, I think you're actually required. Is Michigan a one or two party state?
one party.
Is it? Okay, I
Michigan is
thought
a one
Michigan was
party
a two
state.
party state.
Nope, one party. Only one person has to know.
Okay.
But Fireflies and recording or anything notifies everybody on that meeting. If you come in and then you turn it on, everyone gets notified.
Yeah, I know.
So
No, Michigan's
I
two
don't
party. I just looked.
I don't think so. It's a one party record state. Only one person has to know the recording's happening. we got
Yeah.
we
Now we're on
a rabbit hole. I love it. We always do that though.
oh,
So
okay. Nope. The Court of Appeals actually ruled that it is a one party state. The law
yeah,
is apparently ambiguous.
it's very ambiguous actually.
Yeah.
I read through it at one point. That's another topic at hand of why I was recording somebody and not
Yep.
letting them know. So I think you should let the meeting organizer know, hey, I want this is how I take notes. Do you mind if I set this up? I mean, that's one way to get past that.
Yep.
Um, what about so what do you do with the person that's the constant interrupter on the meeting? They're talking all the time. They're taking it all.
Yeah, the problem is that tends to be me. So I don't do
What do we
anything
do with
about it because it's me.
what do we do with him?
Yeah. So depending on the meeting, I will try to be a fly on the wall, right? Like I have a peer group meeting coming up today, and I'm gonna try to not talk. But I do. Anyone that knows me, I am a relatively lighthearted guy. Like I'm always cracking jokes and trying to make people laugh and trying to like lighten the mood in areas. And I do that in meetings too. And sometimes it can cause trouble. I don't
You
know,
don't.
DM the person and say, hey, like we're trying to get through this, or it is the person that organized the meeting. I think it's on you to say, hey, we have a stop at the top of the hour. We need to stay focused here.
Yeah. No, I think it's important. I think too many people, too many leaders or managers or whatever you want to call them in your roles, um, don't know how to properly run a meeting. And I think it's there are classes on it. I think every person who goes into a leadership role or who will be leading meetings should take some form of training on how to lead a meeting. Because you're right, there are those opportunities that come up where the leader has to say, "Hey, look, Jason, I got like 30 other people on this call. Let's let them ask some questions." I've done that before. I've said that to people.
Yeah.
It's
I
interesting.
mean,
So,
unsurprisingly, I am a relatively dominant personality, and so in the lack of other people speaking, I will tend to speak, and I've actually mindfully attempts to uh, I attempt to listen, right? Like
yeah,
there, I think that's an underrated skill is listening, and we should all try to sit back and listen more than we do.
the old adage, one mouth, two ears for a
Yeah.
reason. Yeah, it's true. I was gonna say what's Dylan saying here? He likes your thought.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
interested to know how you feel more present when you're not focused on taking notes. I think for me, so I'm gonna back up, Dylan, and say this. Um, I take notes because I feel more present when I'm writing something down because I'm a learner that I have to hear it and write it. If I hear it and don't write it, I won't remember it. It didn't happen if I didn't write it down. That's my thing.
I can't read my handwriting, so uh,
I have the Remarkable. Okay, let's plug the
yeah,
Remarkable for a minute. I love that. It's a great tool for me, and I don't waste paper. And I fill the hell out of this thing when I'm writing in it. So what? Let's see here. I got it. When you end a meeting as a leader and you set up the meeting, think about that for a minute. When
yep.
you do you let everybody off first, or do you just end the meeting and kill everybody?
Uh,
Because you in the meeting as the
I end the meeting.
organizer, it just goes right through and it's done.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. No,
yeah.
I
It's
think
a
that's
little. I mean, if
proper
people are
etiquette.
still talking, then I'll leave it open. But I tend to close it, especially if it's a Zoom thing.
Hmm.
It I don't know, if especially if I'm using Fireflies, right? Like, so I'll
Hmm.
drop off the meeting, my recorder's still there, right? So you drop off a meeting, and then you run the risk of, oh well, now they're gonna continue to talk about the meeting or about you or whatever, right? And I don't want it to accidentally get recorded or to accidentally end up in Fireflies, things
Yeah.
that people didn't realize were going to end up there, right? So I had that happen the other day for some meeting I was in where my Fireflies was in it. I had to leave the meeting, right? They ended up leaving the meeting right away, but it was like, oh crap, I wasn't the host of that meeting, so I couldn't even kick it out.
Oh
Uh,
no.
yeah, so it's
Whoa.
I mean that is a consideration to think about is if a
Hmm.
meeting's being recorded, either whether it's actually being recorded or whether there's an AI recorder that just joins in as an attendee.
Right.
Uh, if you close down a meeting, it can for sure continue recording.
Yep. Nope. I totally get it. Well, I mean, so if we're looking at where we're at in time right now,
Yeah, I got
um,
I do have one more. I'm actually really
Go ahead.
curious. So I'm a scout leader, right? And so I we have committee meetings, and
Mhm.
we had a committee meeting on Sunday, and we had a couple things where we needed some more formal stuff, so we kind of fell down to Robert's Rules of Order, where we actually made a motion and somebody had to second
Mhm.
it, right? Because we're moving our bank account, right? So like they needed meeting minutes indicating that we had proposed and done this. How do we feel about things like Robert's Rules of Order and the more formal way that some places hold meetings? I'm a member of the IT Sector Coordinating Council, right, which
Mhm.
is some government thing. And those meetings, they follow a very strict agenda. They do a roll call. Like there's a
Mhm.
whole like formality around the format of those meetings where they'll call motions and stuff. What do we feel about that?
Well, so I'm on the zoning board for the city I live in, and we run Robert's Rules of Order. I'm the chamber that I'm on a board of. We have 44 board members in that chamber. Um, I will tell you, I was not a Robert's Rules of Order guy in the beginning because I thought it was just why are we, of course we all yays, nays, things like that. I motion this, I motion that, and I second. But then you go to a meeting that doesn't follow Robert's Rules of Order, and it's just mayhem. It really is. It can be just a bunch of like you and I talking right now. It's just open ended almost. I think
Yeah,
Robert's Rule of Order, it has its place for meetings like that.
yeah, I think so. We've had some interesting, I think, school board and city council. So I'm in a township. I'm in Perrysburg Township, but the Perrysburg City Council and the Perrysburg School Board, I believe, have both have incidents where they had to do a reminder for some of the members about Robert's Rules of Order because
Mhm.
they just had chaos going on there. And they had a couple loud, outspoken people that I think caused a little bit of trouble. So they had to remind them about Robert's Rules of Order, and you have to be called on to speak, and all the other things that go
Yeah.
along.
Yeah, Travis said it perfectly. It's great when it's followed correctly,
Yeah,
you
oh, we
know.
both clicked it.
Oh, we both. That's funny, and he's right. One of the things, and one of the city council meetings I watch periodically because I'm in that city, it's always through your chair. You don't talk directly to a person. I
Yep.
think it's important because then you're not feeling like you're going to have to argue or you argue with that person. Because I've been in meetings where fists come out,
I like to argue.
but never fight. There's a one. There's meeting etiquette. Never get in a fist fight. Oh man.
Yeah,
All right.
I think
What
we've reached the end of usefulness here with that comment.
never get into it. No, no. I was gonna say, so my thought is I like what you said, an agenda, a clear agenda before
Yep.
if you're running a meeting, have an agenda, have
Yep.
something written out, even if it's on paper with scribble marks. Write out an agenda because I think people appreciate when you're on point or keep people on point.
Uh,
That's my biggest thing.
I have one last thing that I wanted to actually bring up.
Oh,
Is it okay to leave a meeting that you realize that you don't actually aren't actually needed in? This is a huge one because I know Elon Musk, right? Like he at
oh,
Tesla, he's huge on that. He says if you walk into a meeting and in the first 5 minutes you aren't needed, just leave because you have better things to do with your time. And it's right, like you shouldn't. We have meetings that they'll have 10 people in them, right? And if you add up the value, right, the burdened rate of those people,
mhm,
35, 40, 50, $60 an hour, this is a meeting that's costing the company anywhere between 350 and $600 an hour to hold that meeting. So if you go to a meeting and there isn't, and you're not adding value to it and you're not receiving value from it, should you leave?
actually, I almost think that yes, you should. And here's why I think it because I think the person that called the meeting that maybe brought all these people into a meeting, if they've asked you to be at a meeting, they they should also understand and respect your time that if
Yep.
you were there just to be an observer, that wasn't right.
Yeah.
If you're not an active participant in a meeting, unless you're trying to learn something. So, if like for me, I've been in some meetings where when we first started, I wanted to hear how it went because I had to learn how to do it.
Yep.
That's one thing. But being called to a meeting where they just have you there because whatever,
Yeah.
that's
I
stupid.
mean,
Yeah,
I
get
have
out.
a bunch of client meetings that for a couple of clients in particular where I get invited to them all the time, and operationally I'm not needed for them, right? Like I
Mhm.
have essentially subordinates that we send to the meetings that, they can bring any takeaways back to me. There's no direct action for me. I'm usually just there as an observer, and I usually just don't attend them anymore, right? And then
Mhm.
I feel bad because occasionally they do need me, right? So that then my answer back to them is even department meetings internally, right? Like I don't attend all the MSP stand-ups. I don't attend all that stuff anymore. And for a while I did. I attended all of them. But as my time gets busier, I tend to not join a lot of meetings and tell people like, hey, you've got me scheduled for this. I am tentative. If you need
Mhm.
me in that meeting, you need to tell me that you need me in that meeting, and I
Right.
will attend that one of them, right? But I'm not going to go to every single one of these meetings uh, just because you invited me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm in agreement. Like I know, like we have our Monday meeting, the sales meeting, and you're in that one every week. And then I think you're also invited to our solutions design on Fridays. You don't
Yep.
go to those all the time, maybe once in a while, but
If
there's no
if I'm
need for
free,
you
I
to be
will.
there. Yeah, there's no need for
Yeah.
you to be there. We're having a meeting today with a client. I don't need. I mean, I guess for me, I do need to be there because I was the
Yeah,
one
the
that started
10:30
this
meeting, you
whole
need to be at
this
that one.
whole thing.
I don't know if I need to be there, but I will be there.
Yeah, because this is it's a major meeting that some things are going to be spoken about. I talked about. There we go. And but for me, I'm going to be a fly on that wall in that meeting because
Mhm.
there's not really much I can contribute to that meeting, but I'm going to learn a hell of a lot from it.
Well, and uh, in this case, you've managed that account, so I think that you actually you'll be more useful in that meeting than you think you will be.
Well, I will tell you, I'm the one that started that whole process on July 4th. So,
So
and you hate me
okay.
for that. Anyways,
I think
I think
we're
we're good.
I think we're good. Okay, so I want to recap a little bit here, right? Like, so I think we decided end meetings on time,
Hmm.
end them 5 to 10 minutes early if you can, have
Yeah.
clear action items and agendas,
Hmm.
send follow up takeaways, and Robert's rules of order if formality dictates it. And if you're not
Yeah.
needed in a meeting, leave. I think that is a recap of our conversation there, don't you think?
I think so. And that took 33 minutes and 7 seconds to say.
Cool.
Love it.
Yeah. Okay.
All
Well, I
right.
will talk to you. I will say next week, but it'll be before next week because we have to record another one of these for Tuesday.
That's right. We do. All right, man.
Okay.
Hey, everyone, have a good one. Thank you for being a part of Business Technicalities.
Talk to you next week. See ya.